once you see that Eddie Reynoso message or the phone call come in, you just go, hello. You know, is it us? You know, and that's you know,
then he says, "Oh no, I'm sorry, wrong number."
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I was after Al. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Dazn Boxing Show. I go by the name of Ak.
And I'm Barack the Boxing Bully.
Hope you guys had a phenomenal weekend. I did nothing but watch boxing. Hearn Unleashed today. Eddie Hearn to be on with us today. We had a hell of a light heavyweight showdown that we're going to talk about. My man Joe Smith on the opening bell. Let's go.
Joe Smith Jr.'s first WBO light heavyweight title defense was a successful one as he knocked out last-minute replacement Steven Gerrard in round 9 over the weekend. After his win, the Beast wasted no time in calling for a step up in competition for his next fight, naming Artur Beterbiev and Canelo Alvarez as desired opponents. What are you thinking about the Beast's performance?
Well, look, Barack, you know, when a guy has a last-minute replacement, I always cut him a little slack, regardless of who it is, how you train. If you got a guy in front of you that you weren't getting prepared for, you know, I cut him a little slack. Either way, overall, I like Joe Smith's performance. I thought he looked like a big, strong, light heavyweight. And as he should be, you know, it's 175 pounds. He's probably going in there, you know, 190. Joe Smith, you know what you're going to get with him every time out. He looked good, though, considering the time off, all the fights that have been delayed, and the last one, replacement. He got the guy out of there. That's what everybody expected. Credit to his opponent, who last 9 rounds. Nevertheless, this is what I expected, Barack. A stoppage victory at some point from Joe Smith. Kudos to him.
Yeah, you know, it used to be 3 weight classes. Now, every time someone would fight from middleweight all the way up to super middleweight, they were doing like an audition for a Canelo fight. Now it's probably 4 weight classes, you know, including cruiserweight, even though Canelo hasn't fought at cruiserweight anymore. So if this was an audition at the light heavyweight division, then I think Joe Smith passed. Now, yes, it was a last-minute replacement, but that's what you're supposed to do with a last-minute replacement. It took 9 rounds, so yeah, like you said, kudos to him for lasting 9 rounds, especially coming in with hardly any time to prep. But remember that he was
he was training. He was training for a fight.
He was already training for a fight, so he should have been prepared, at least physically, you know. But Joe Smith Jr. dominated every single round. He landed over 55% in his power punches, which is incredible, and that's a lot of damage that Steve took, but he hung in there into the 9th round. Now, like I said, if this was an audition for Canelo fight, he passed it, but he also showed that he can box from the outside. He can actually walk you down and finish the job. But let's say this. You know, he was saying that he wanted to fight Artur Beterbiev over Bivol because he wants to fight Bivol last. I don't really think he's in such a hurry to fight Canelo because maybe he thinks in his mind that it's not even a realistic fight. What do you think makes sense for him next?
No, I mean, it's very much a realistic fight in my opinion, because I think he's a guy stylistically that I think Eddie Reynoso and Canelo's team feel that will do well against, that Canelo will do well against. And maybe he's thinking, hey, I go on and beat a guy like Beterbiev, my profile goes up. Guess what? The Canelo fight is a bigger fight, a much bigger fight with a bigger purse. And maybe that's how he's looking at it. Maybe he's looking at it like, hey, maybe Canelo could be the last guy. Maybe I can go pick up 2 straps. I don't think Canelo's gonna wait around that long or whatever, but maybe I can go get another strap and make it a unification bout against Canelo Alvarez. I think that makes sense for him. Either way, he earned the fight, one of those guys, for a title to unify his title. So I like Joe Smith's performance. So I did think he fought a little bit better from the outside, better than he normally does. So, and I like the fact that he wants to fight Beterbiev. That's what's impressive to me. You want to go at the killer. You want to go at the guy that everybody feels like is too tough to beat. I think Joe Smith is ready for the big fight, ready for the big payday. He's crawled his way up, and he's earned it.
The one thing I know is that you never know if you can give credit to somebody who calls out Canelo, because Canelo comes with such a big payday. You know what I mean? But when you call out somebody like Beterbiev, that's when we can give you credit. And I just think that that's the better fight. I think that's the better fight because it's just crazy how nowadays a guy who stands 5'8", barely over 5'8", and I'm talking about Canelo, would be the favorite in a fight against anybody in the light heavyweight division. That's
it's
ridiculous
insane.
to me.
It's insane.
Yeah, that just speaks to his greatness, you know. But you're talking about two bangers, two guys with a lot of power, Joe Smith Jr. and Artur Beterbiev, meeting in the center of the ring, who don't like to back down. I don't even know if they can back down, if it's in their arsenal. That would be an incredible matchup, 100%.
Yeah. Right, and obviously, you know, guys being on Top Rank fighting on ESPN, that fight looks like it's the you know, most likely the one that's going to be made. I'm looking forward to that.
Who wins that fight? Because sometimes you like to give predictions, you know, before
earlier
fights.
On,
yeah.
Earlier on, yeah. Today is not going to be one of those days.
And then you switch up your prediction the fight the day before.
Well, I just hope people forget about that prediction because it was so long ago. But no, that fight I will have to give you my predictions on the fight week. When I see guys at the press conferences, at the weigh-ins, and hopefully we will be there. But I'm not making a prediction for that one. I'll tell you what, I'll predict this. It's going to be a hell of a fight. No question about it.
Hello, gentlemen.
Listen, Eddie, great to have you on. I want to jump right into it. Look, the holidays are over. It's 2022. It's time to make some big fights happen. Let's get to the bottom of this, all right? Look, Devin Haney puts out a tweet going at George Kambosos. Just to give the viewers some context, he says, "We're making the fight or what? I'm agreeing to all of your terms, whether it's a vaccine, travel. It's starting to look like there's some ducking going on." Then he says, Mr. Eddie Hearn. But George Kambosos responds, "I love how you manipulate and lie to your fans, talk a big game but show no action. You know, a bit like your fights, and patiently waiting with all my belts for the offer from your boss, Mr. Eddie Hearn, because I got a stadium ready in Australia." So what's going on here, Eddie? Let's get to the bottom.
Well, I think Devin fired back after that and said, "Oh, so we got to come to your backyard and we got to put all the money up, have we?" Is that? You know,
yes,
so,
he did say that.
Yeah, I think that, you know, there's a lot of conversations going on between myself and Lou DiBella at the moment. Obviously, the two promoters. We're trying to find a way to figure out how the structure of this deal works in terms of international TV, you know, money being generated in Australia, etc. I think we're in a decent place. I spoke to him this morning, which was, I think, 3 o'clock in the morning his time. He was up, which means he was working maybe Aussie time as well. And, you know, I think everybody involved wants to make the fight happen, you know, from George to myself, to Lou, to Devin, to Dazn. So, you know, in that respect, I think we've got a great chance to do so. We're getting to the point now where we're talking about the financials of the deal, which obviously is going to be the make or break part of that. Devin has no problem going to Australia. He said that in the message, and obviously getting vaccinated to do so, which is halfway through that puzzle as well. And he's ready. He's ready to make that fight. It's the fight for the division. It's the fight to find out who is the true undisputed champion in the division. But always, ultimately, George Kambosos is going to want a lot of money for that fight. Devin Haney's going to want what he feels is fair. And we're getting to that moment now with Lou DiBella and Dazn. So confident, to be honest with you, confident we can make that fight, because I think it's the fight. And I think it's the fight that those parties want most. And generally when that happens, you got a great shot.
Is it true that, Golden Boy is trying to get Kambosos to wait for a Ryan Garcia fight? And I've seen that on social media as well. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't, no. I mean, I don't think George wants to wait around for anything. You know, I think he wants to strike while the iron's hot. I think he's a fighter. I think he wants to be in the biggest fights in boxing. He wants to make as much money as he can, and so he should, because he should capitalize on that great victory as soon as possible. And, you know, I think we live in a world now, we've seen over the last couple of years, where waiting around is very dangerous. You know, strike while it's there, make the big fights while they're there, make the money while it's there. And that's what George Kambosos is all about, or what he seems to be about, is being in the biggest fights, taking the biggest challenges. And it doesn't matter what you call yourself, undisputed is, ultimately there'll always be the cloud over that situation until this fight happens. And the winner of that fight will be the undisputed lightweight world champion. No questions asked. And that's important. George knows there's cloud, and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be undisputed. I'm not saying Tio didn't deserve to be undisputed, but they're not. And this is the only way to resolve it. It's one of the best fights in boxing. You've got a young man in Devin Haney who will jump on the plane and make it happen. And he's ready to do so.
The sad part is that it's not the boxer's fault. They just got caught up in the politics of boxing.
Same with Devin Haney. When you talk about the WBC title, he never won it in the ring. He wanted to win it in the ring. He wanted to fight Lomachenko. But, we're here in this position, and this is the way to clean it all up.
Okay, so let's go to the heavyweight divisions. I don't know if you saw Vladimir Klitschko's response. Well, actually, just his statement to Tyson Fury, calling him a hypocrite, saying, "Don't you forget, you tested positive as well," because Fury, for some reason, has a problem with every fighter. He called Usyk a steroid man, but even when he's dissing Usyk, he finds a way to squeeze a shot at Anthony Joshua in there. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, of course. I think Fury's highly entertaining. I mean, I've never heard Usyk be called a steroid cheat before, but Fury found a way to do it. Talking about him going from middleweight up to heavyweight and, etc. And obviously Vladimir feels very strongly about Alexander Usyk and has represented him and fired back and pointed out that Tyson Fury tested positive for steroids as well, or for PEDs. So, I think what this generally means is that Fury's approaching fight mode. I think he's firing himself up. I mean, you see it's like a fitness journal with Tyson Fury. Every day is, I've done another run, and he's getting himself pumped up and ready to go into camp and ready to fight, which is good news for the division, good news for boxing. I don't think he really cares what other people say about him. He's going to want to say what's on his mind or in his mouth. But sometimes he doesn't think about other stuff that's happened as well, but it's irrelevant anyway. He's going to say what he's going to say.
Absolutely. So basically this is like his psychological warfare. Is the beginning of that.
I think so, yeah. I think it's always psychological warfare with Tyson Fury, and I think that's one thing that he's very good at. He's getting into people's heads, whether that's during a fight, whether that's during press conferences, or whether that's now out of camp. He likes to be vocal and sort of set that position up for himself. I think that the Fury AJ fight, someone said to me the other day, will always be there. It's still the fight. I had a guy come up to me today. He says, when's AJ fighting Fury? I'm kind of like, well, that ship sailed a little bit. We've got a few things to work out first. And, no, AJ's fighting, rematching Usyk. Oh, is he? Oh, when's the Fury fight? It's like, it's like that's the fight that people still want to see. And that's a fight that will always be there. Of course, the bigger the better, but that fight, I promise you, will happen. Whether that's later this year, whether that's early next year, Fury AJ is a dead cert to happen because it's too big a fight not to.
And speaking of big fights, there's been talk about Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor on April 30th. There was just news over the weekend of Shakur Stevenson, kind of unifying with Oscar Valdez on the same date. I don't know, how true these dates are, how likely, but if it comes to that, Eddie, what's your approach on having that fight on the same day?
When you got a fight as big as Taylor Serrano, and you've got Matchroom and myself, and you've got Jake Paul, and you've got the Road Show, I don't worry too much about other fights. I mean, listen, Valdez Stevenson is a tremendous fight. It's not gonna cause the same kind of noise as Taylor Serrano with myself and Jake Paul behind it. That's just facts. Got a big platform with ESPN. I understand all that. Trust me, when you see the noise around this fight, around Madison Square Garden, for a historic legacy defining moment, not just for women's boxing, but for boxing, I'm fine. And we live in a world now, you can't try and work around other fights on other weeks, because next thing you change weeks and then there's another pay-per-view event popping up, or there's a UFC fight popping up. It's a waste of time. What you can do is you can get smart and say to Top Rank, you know, as we have an open relationship with, what time are you going? You know, maybe we're on the East Coast at Madison Square Garden, you're in Vegas. Maybe we go 10 o'clock Eastern time and you go 11 o'clock Eastern time. Doesn't really matter. We're not moving for the potential of a fight that might happen. And as I said, there'll be a lot of people that might watch this and say, oh, come on, Eddie, Stevenson Valdez is bigger than Taylor Serrano. No, not in my opinion. Not with the global media noise that this fight is going to generate. This is going to be a showstopper at Madison Square Garden. And as I said, don't underestimate. I like to think that I've got a big platform myself and I make a lot of noise. Well, there's a strange guy with silly blonde hair that's going to be working with me, who will make a lot of noise around this fight, and he's very good at what he does. So combined, as I said, this is going to be a fight that's going to really, create shockwaves around the world.
Yeah, and you just talk about accomplishments alone. Taylor and Serrano far surpass basically almost any man in the sport. But you know what? Why don't we just try and get a new date for Mike Coppinger? Because it seems like he's the guy who hands out all of the boxing dates.
Yeah, I know. Well, Mike knows everything before it happens, Although he got shut down, didn't he, by Eddie Reynoso the other day? He says, there's negotiations going on with Charlo and Canelo, and he comes straight out. He said, there's no negotiations right now. So, but Mike's good. Mike's very good. He's rarely wrong. Rarely wrong.
Speaking of negotiations, Eddie, look, somebody put out a fake tweet with Mike Benson's fake page.
I've had everyone's been messaging about me saying I'm retiring. Mate, you wouldn't believe how many messages I've had. What? You're joking? It's an extra N on that account. It's what you've always got to look out for.
Yeah,
right. So that's all nonsense.
Not retiring yet, no.
All right, so listen, Jake Paul, speaking of Jake Paul, look, he made according to Forbes, he made over $40 million in 2021.
That's very good. Some of us have to work a whole month for that.
Wow.
It's a joke.
When you hear that number, Eddie, is that what you expected for Jake Paul to earn in the sport of boxing?
You don't know what to believe. I mean, if you're putting it out there in every other post over the last 48 hours, there's a good chance it's more than what you actually made. Do you know what I mean? But look, I'm sure he's done very well, and he deserves, that the first Woodley fight, which definitely did really well for him, and I'm sure it did great buyers and stuff like that. The rumors are the second one didn't do that great numbers, but I'm sure that, listen, this is a guy that away from boxing is probably extremely comfortable and making good money anyway through his platforms and his YouTube numbers. And I'm sure he had a very fruitful boxing year. I do think that the harder thing now will be to keep relevant and keep people excited with certain opponents. Do you know what I mean? This is why I keep saying, if I'm him, I'm trying to find a way to fight McGregor or Masvidal, or and I'm there to cash out. People aren't going to be that interested anymore in a smaller name. And as I said before, the Tommy Fury fight might be a big fight in the UK, but it's really not a big fight in the US. People will start. Don't forget, this is a novelty act, and novelty acts do become a little bit boring. They have a lifespan, unless you keep raising the bar and keep surprising people. And now it's all about the fight he may take. I saw Julio Cesar Chavez and people like that, and that's okay. It's a fight that he could. People want to see him in a fight he could lose. And because there's going to be a lot of people celebrating when he loses, and that's what makes him a draw, because people want to see him win and people want to see him lose. For me, the fight is Conor McGregor. I keep saying it, and I think actually it's a good fight, to be honest with you. You've got the weight difference. Conor McGregor can box. He's not a boxer, but he had an amateur background. He's a lot more accomplished than a Tyrone Woodley and an Askren and these kind of people. And, that's a massive fight. But obviously you've got the whole UFC, Dana White, Jake Paul, which, Jake Paul's done really well to engage Dana White. in those conversations. I mean, you know, I have a huge amount of respect for Dana White, and I was quite shocked that he posted a video about Jake Paul addressing him, you know, and that would have been music to Jake Paul's ears, you know, music to his ears, because that's what he does. You know, he goads you to a point where he's going to get under your skin.
He's going to get under your skin in one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go from the self-proclaimed face of boxing to the real face of boxing, and that's Canelo Alvarez. Now, Joe Smith Jr. just had a great outing against Steve Gerfraud. Do you think he passed his audition for a possible fight with Canelo?
Yeah, I think it depends on what Canelo wants to do, you know, in terms of the division he wants to fight in. You know, I've been quite vocal that I'd like to see him fight Dmitry Bivol next, then possibly Joe Smith, and then Beterbiev and clean up at 175. I think with Canelo, anything's possible. You know, I think him and Eddie Reynoso will talk, will come up with a plan, we'll look at the options, and it's really going to come down to what excites him. You know, does Joe Smith excite him? Maybe. But, you know, Dmitry Bivol might excite him more because Dmitry Bivol beat Joe Smith comfortably when they boxed. You know, it was a couple of years ago, but still, you know, I mean, he's undefeated. Bivol, he's beaten Joe Smith already. It's a fight that could be made quite easily. But as I said, you know, this is a really unique setup with Eddie and Sal, you know, almost to a point where Eddie will drive around there or get on the phone and just literally go through all the options and they'll go, him. You know, there's not a lot of science in it. It just comes down to feeling and passion and legacy and drive and just, you know, something that they want to do. I don't think they're interested in just taking a fight that doesn't really do anything for them.
Well, I mean, Joe Smith Joe holds a world title, so it would be him becoming champion at 175. So there's some value in that.
Yeah, definite value. You know, I think he would pick Bivol over Smith at the moment in terms of accomplishments. But then, of course, the Joe Smith fight could definitely follow, and you know, everyone's going to be putting their options forward, you know, and saying, well, would you like to do this? And that's something that he'll go through, and I do expect him to make a decision quite soon. You know, I know that he, you know, Eddie responded to Mike Coppinger's stuff and said they're not negotiating stuff, but it's, you know, we had conversations at the weekend, not overly deep, but I know that they're definitely thinking now about making a move in terms of their next fight, and it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks.
So you've made an offer already. Look, you have a lot going on. You're trying to get this Kambosos Devin Haney fight going. I know you're still working on AJ Usyk, which I'll ask you, how far are we on that fight as far as the date?
Still the same, really. I mean, I expect that fight to take place in April, possibly early May. I think it will take place in the UK. Spoke to Alex Krasuk last week. AJ, although he's never really left training, he's not in full training camp yet, but will be soon, and will also be probably, you know, going to make it clear to you guys and the world who that new team will include in terms of his training team, where that camp will take place. It's a very important time for him. It's a big fight, and I think April, early May at the latest, you know, in London is the most likely scenario for AJ Usyk too.
All right, so I guess it's a waiting game right now. You made an offer for Canelo and Bivol. Is it safe to say that?
Not just about that, you know, it's not a case of just an offer for that fight. It's just a conversation to say these are the various options that we feel we could deliver for Sal next, and I'm sure PBC have done that. Top Rank might do that. You know, everybody gets the option and the ability to do that, and he just sits down with Eddie, like I said, with no real science, just with a cup of tea if they have one, and say, what do you fancy? What should we do? Let's do that one.
It must be nice to be in that.
And then you get a phone call. It's just a waiting game, you know. Once you see that Eddie Reynoso message or the phone call come in, you just go, hello. You know, is it us? You know, and that's you know, it'd be
then he says, "Oh no, I'm sorry, wrong number." But
yeah. Oh, sorry, I was after Al. Yeah. No, listen, it would be. I had some of the best experiences of my career working with Canelo and Eddie Reynoso. It would be a joy to work with those guys again. So we've got everything crossed.
Looking forward to it, man. Thanks as always, Eddie. Cheers. See you soon.
Cheers, guys.
Let's get ready to rumble! The future has arrived! Shake off!
He is throwing a sledgehammer.
Munguia
is knocking on everybody's door.
Lawrence Acoli.
He's going to come in ready. The champ is back. The king is back. There's that left hook.
The fight starts now!
All right, Barack, before we get out of here, it's time for some birthday shouts. Two of the GOATs, Roy Jones Jr., our guy, who was pretty much unbeatable in his prime. He turned 53 yesterday, and today is the birthday of the greatest of all time, an inspiration to so many people. It would have been his 80th birthday, Muhammad Ali's.
Happy birthday to both. Incredible, great champions. If I had to give a greatest Roy Jones Jr. moment, I think it would be the rematch in 1997 against Montel Griffin, because that first fight, I thought he did a great acting job and acting like he was hurt. Roy Jones, just momentum made him hit Montel Griffin after he was already down, and he got disqualified. That was Roy Jones' first official loss. He would have been 49-0 after he won the heavyweight division, heavyweight title, if he would have continued on without that loss. And his rematch was just an incredible one-punch knockout. That was my greatest Roy Jones Jr. moment. And as far as the greatest, Muhammad Ali, after he beat Frazier on my birthday, January 28th, on my son's birthday, October 30th, he beat the great George Foreman, and that's my greatest Muhammad Ali moment, when he beat George Foreman with the rope-a-dope.
My favorite Roy fight was when he beat the great James Toney. I thought it was super impressive. I loved that fight. And Ali, I'm with you on that. There was no fight like Ali coming when nobody felt he could beat the hard-hitting George Foreman, and he did it in such a dramatic fashion. What an inspiration. Listen, happy birthday to both guys. That's our show for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Peace and love. Stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow.